sent them a note.
You ready? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'll call to order the March 28 meeting of the West Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency Board. Would you please?
March 15th.
March 15th, or I just said month of March. But would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item of business today is approval of our agenda.
I'll make the motion we approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
It's been first and seconded to approve agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Public comment on matters not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on items not on the agenda? I do not see anyone at this time, so we'll move on with item 3, approval of the February 15th, 2018 meeting minutes.
I'll move approval.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, report out on closed session.
The board met in closed session to confer with legal counsel on 2 items of existing litigation that are identified on the closed session agenda. No action was taken on the second such item, and on the first item of existing litigation, the board gave settlement authority to counsel.
Thank you. Item 5, review of monthly year-to-date revenue and expenses. Mr. Zolo.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This report summarizes revenues and expenditures for the month of January 2018. I'll start on page 2. The starting balance for the month was $146,000 roughly in funds 870, 871. We received a quarter 25 true-up with DWR for $2.6 million. That's funding that now was freed up from Fund 257 and moved over to 871. So it wasn't a check per se, but it allowed us to take down a portion of advance funding. We also received the first installment of the flood assessment for 2018 for $2,274,000 roughly, bringing revenues for the month to $4.5 million roughly. On the expense side, there were $49,000 in administrative activity, and we booked the March, I think, debt service payments for $303,000 and $1.2 million. Most of the activity on the project side was with the Southport project for $1.4 million. That was related to construction management, environmental support, et cetera. There's also some activity in the RFMP and work on the Deepwater Ship Canal East slip repair project. Total expenses for the month were $3.1 million, bringing the agency's cash position in Fund 870 and 871 in January to $1.9 million. On page 1 of the report, you can see the overall cash position for the agency is $20.2 million roughly. And I also included a summary of how the bond funds work since we had a bond payment book in the month. There's 2 views on this. One is it just looks at the overall balance sheet of the bond debt funds, which are there to sequester money that's obligated to pay debt service. So the first one, you can see that the combined cash positions at the end of January was what 1.2 and 2.3 respectively for the 2011 and 2015 bond. Another way to look at it is that second set of figures below, and that looks at the revenue that's coming in and the amount that's required to be held in reserve as part of the bond instrument. And if you look at if you deduct the reserve, you look at the nets, and those are the net monies set aside for the year that are required for debt service. The expenditure side, you'll see they kind of closely match our report for January. There's also little bits and pieces of interest that accrue in these funds too. So the numbers don't quite tie, but they're real close. And let's see, and other things, good news on the north area projects, we've finished geodetic review, so we're getting ready to wind down those projects. It's starting to look really good, and we've got about $4 million tied up in retention, so we're looking forward to pulling that down. We're working on the true-up for quarter 27 right now. We're starting to get the pieces lined up for that, even though we're in advance, so we'll be able to move more money over into 871 as we enter into the construction season. In the February report, you'll see the true-up for quarter 26 and real estate payment number 4. So our overall cash position at the time remains really good. We're watching the outstanding litigation and talking with our partners at the state to manage cash flow on that. We're mildly optimistic like that. We're going to be able to cruise through that get that out of the way and taken care of as we enter the second year of construction. And that pretty much ends the report for January.
Okay. Does anybody have any specific questions at all?
No.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the consent items. There are 3 items on consent. Does anyone have any questions or want to pull anything out? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to consider the consent items presented.
I'll move the consent agenda.
And I'll second that. So all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 9, public hearing and consideration of Resolution 180301 authorizing eminent domain action to acquire real property on parcel 89857-3-1.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This morning, staff is requesting that you approve the findings and adopt Resolution 180301. In so doing, the board will make a finding that the project is a matter of public interest and necessity, that the project was planned and located in a manner that is compatible with the most public good and with the least amount of harm, that the property, a portion of what is now the Clarkbrook Branch Line Trail, with owners unknown, is necessary for the project, that WSAFCA is excused from making an offer of just compensation in accordance with Government Code Section 7267.2 because an owner could not be located or identified despite efforts by WSAFCA staff. Authorized the WSAFCA attorney to file a complaint in eminent domain to acquire the property of interest as well as a deposit for the requested acquisition. WSAFCA has been granted authority to accomplish the purposes and projects to achieve a minimum 200-year level of flood risk reduction. WSAFCA has commissioned and updated studies for the entire Sacramento levee improvement program and determined that substantial improvements are needed to meet federal criteria and to protect the lives and livelihoods of those living and working in West Sacramento. In 2010, WSAFCA engaged HEDR for environmental design and permitting work to prepare an early implementation program to guide the first phase of improvements with a focus on those projects that provide the greatest public safety and least negative effect, one of which is the Sacramento River Southport Levee Improvement Project. The board has certified the environmental impact report for the project, adopted a finding of fact, a statement of overriding considerations, the mitigation, monitoring, and reporting plan for the project. The Southport project constructs a portion of Village Parkway to replace South River Road on the levee crown, thereby improving the community's ability to conduct flood fighting and conduct an evaluation if so needed. The acquisition of land is necessary for the construction of Village Parkway at the intersection of the Clarksburg Branch Line Trail for the control of pedestrian, cycling, equestrian, and vehicular interaction at the intersection. The acquisition in fee consists of approximately 0.17 acres and is necessary for the project and the purpose of a public roadway function, and evaluation has been determined for the property. By adopting the resolution, the agency resolves to acquire the property through the exercise of power of eminent domain through authority identified in the resolution, that the public use of the property for a public roadway is integrated with and supports levee improvements. By adopting the resolution, the board is declaring public interest and necessity require the project. The project is planned and located in a manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury. The property is necessary for the project. WSAFCA is excused from making the offer required by Section 7267.2 of the Government Code because despite reasonable diligence, the potential owners could not be located. The WSAFCA, through its appropriate officers and agents, are authorized and empowered to acquire the property in the name of WSAFCA by condemnation through the provisions of eminent domain law of the state of California. Prepare, file, and prosecute in court the necessary proceedings for acquisition of the property, to deposit the probable amount of compensation with the appropriate authority, and to make application to the court for an order permitting WSAFCA to take immediate possession and use of the property. The end.
Okay, thank you. Does any of the members have any questions for Mr. Zolo? If not, I will open up a public hearing on the matter, on the resolution. Public hearing is opened. Anyone wishes to speak concerning this matter? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask again if the board has any questions or comments? And if not, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution, or actually, I'll make the motion to approve Resolution 18-03-01.
I'll second it.
There's a second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Item 10, informational report, draft bulkhead alternative analysis. Katie, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. If I could have my PowerPoint presentation, that would be very helpful. Thank you. This morning, I have a brief verbal report for the Commission on some work that I have been doing in coordination with Greg Fabin. So thank you. Okay, we'll begin. For the Commissioner's benefit, I've been in front of you 2 times over the past year, and most of you are aware that I'm working on a reuse master plan in Pioneer Bluff. This is just a sort of a reminder where I am in that process. It's not a specific plan, so the recommendations that are included in that plan don't have CEQA attached to them. It's sort of just a due diligence document. It's a compilation of analysis that's been done, and it's really just focused on sort of exploring some additional new ideas or old ideas that needed maybe to be refreshed and reconciled. And it should be approved by the City Council no later than July 2018, when my grant deadline becomes due. Pardon me. In February of 2017, Greg and I came to this commission to discuss some of the policy issues related to balancing economic development or real estate development with the mission of this board, flood protection. And we presented sort of an approach that we thought would work in these urban areas where we're focusing on meeting the requirements of flood protection, but all of these extra recommendations in terms of setting additional property aside for future improvements, that those be balanced with the urban expectations for the site. This was the recommended parks, trails, and open space vision for the reuse master plan that we also presented to this board at that time. And it shows that we are looking at retrofitting the Stone Lock facility, which is where the floodgate that protects the deep water ship channel is located, and that's site number 4. The alternatives analysis that I wanted to give you kind of a preview, sort of like a trailer of a movie, so to speak, today, is related to that analysis that was done on that floodgate and how it informs and potentially influences the adaptive reuse of Site 4. So the bulkhead alternatives analysis looked to consider non-flood protection co-benefits related to the recommended flood protection solution. The recommended flood protection solution that's in the general reevaluation report is to fill this space in that you see in orange with dirt and create a new levee, effectively reconnecting the levee that existed prior to the construction of the port and the lock facility. We looked at 4 different alternatives. We looked at a retrofit of the stop logs. That was analyzed in the 2016 alternatives analysis report. Wood Rogers had analyzed the potential to retrofit that structure. They had assessed that structure in 2016 and determined that it did not offer 200-year level of flood protection. They prepared a technical memo, and that technical memo said that it's possible that that structure could be retrofitted, and it recommended a few additional next steps, including material testing and going out and doing an excavation and dive to look at the quality of the stop logs that were under the water, since they haven't been removed since 2009. So we did that additional analysis. We picked up those threads that were in that alternatives analysis technical memo. We did that analysis, looked through the material testing, sent divers out to inspect the site. We also looked at an alternative that would install a new permanent flood wall to the west of the gates that are here that you can see. We looked at the GRR solution. We also looked at installing pipes into that levee to allow fish passage and water quality issues, so that water from the Sacramento River could theoretically flow into the deepwater ship channel if the sector gates and the stop logs were removed. And then we also looked at an alternative that would retrofit the sector gates, the eastern sector gates, so that it would provide flood protection. It would also be electrified. Here are the preliminary results. These are still in a draft document that I expect will be completed in about the next 3 weeks. We're waiting on some additional analysis. I'll pause to give you a moment to look at that. As you can see, the GRR solution, which is items 3A and 3B, those were costed out at $44 million roughly. That matches the estimates that's also in the GRR, so we had that estimate independently verified. The retrofit of the sector gates, which scores very high on all of the co-benefits that we identified, water quality in the deepwater ship channel, getting migrating fish out of the deepwater ship channel back into the Sacramento River, ecosystem enhancement, we are working with the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation's Science Division. They have been talking to us about the possibility of reusing or adaptive reuse of the deepwater ship channel that does not impede maritime activity, that would allow for fish food to be grown in the deepwater ship channel and then pushed back down into the delta to help the delta smelt. So this solution also does very well with that. It also allows for potential recreational opportunities, and it scores well in historic preservation, since it would be retrofitting the locks to do what they used to do. It does have some O&M issues. So we are going to be recommending to the City Council that we continue to pursue Alternative 4. And this is what Alternative 4 would look like. It would effectively remove the stop logs, put them back in their detention basin. We would do freeboard improvements around the sector gates, and we would raise the sector gates approximately 4 feet if we pursued this recommendation. I can go back if anyone wants to see that again, sorry. So we're finalizing the bulkhead alternatives report. We're waiting for a technical memo from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation Science Division on that ecosystem enhancement component that I talked to you. They've also been sharing with us all the data that they've been collecting from the USGS about water quality in the deepwater ship channel. So we're including that in our report as well. They are very interested stakeholders, and they have deep pockets. So we're very interested in maintaining a good relationship with them and incorporating their information into our report. I'd like to return at the next meeting on April 19th and have a more comprehensive workshop with this group on the document, and also provide you the document so you can see it in its entirety. It's about 50 pages and with several appendices related to how water flows through from the Sacramento River in the deepwater ship channel. And then I'll be incorporating it into the reuse master plan and workshopping those items over the next few months to the Planning Commission and City Council. Mr. Fabian and I will be working together over these next few weeks to figure out what those recommendations actually look like, what those next steps mean for the City Council and for this board, and so we'll have that information for you when we return in a month's time. I just wanted to give this opportunity to see it, since it's sort of hot off the presses. I went to the Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Commission and the Parks Commission last week and presented this material to them at very high level. You're getting a little bit more information, and you'll get more in a month's time. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can at this time, since we're still kind of working through the draft report. But that concludes my informational update. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing this to us so that we can see it along the way as it's progressing. You mentioned that there was a GRR recommendation. So if we take a different path, does that affect, what kind of effects might that have?
So, Greg, did you want to answer that, or would you like me to take a stab?
I do want
Okay,
to
great.
answer that. So excuse me, the recommended alternative in the GRR is to basically close the gap. And this is a feasibility study level that was done through the GRR, not a project specific. So when you get down to the ground and start doing the engineering and looking into it, then we think this is just a different alternative to accomplish the same goal, and it would not deviate from in essence, the GRR. So I think it's compatible. And a lot more cost-effective, potentially.
Any other questions?
If you go back to your first item that you showed, the, okay.
The tables, sir, is that what you're looking
The
for?
table, the next one over, where it shows the fill-in for the,
Sir, is this the one you're
four.
looking for? There
Yeah,
you go.
four there.
Okay.
or, okay. On this number 4 in the bottom deal, this is, how's this going to affect the levee maintenance in that area?
Are you are you regarding the question that you were talking about the fill in here, or are you talking about the?
Here, the fill-in, when you fill it in, how's this going to affect where the section comes up next to the river over there? That's going to be a maintenance area. That's going to be, somebody's going to have to maintain it.
Are you referring to the dredging that would have to occur? I'm sorry, I'm not following your question, sir.
After this is filled in,
We're-
That was one of the alternatives, and I think they're going away from that alternative.
you're going away from that
Yeah.
one.
We are recommending not filling it in, or that's at least the tentative approach that Greg and I are discussing, is going to the city council and recommending not filling it in per the GRR solution, and instead advancing the retrofit of the Sexter Gate as the flood protection solution in this area.
Okay.
But to answer your question more broadly, Bill, in any solution that would be recommended that would provide flood protection, ongoing O&M has to be part of that solution. So that's one of the things that perhaps during the workshop, we can go into a little more detail about what the O&M responsibilities would be for each of the alternatives and whether they're practical, what the cost is, and those types of things. So more information in April.
That was my intent.
Thank you.
Just a couple questions. I mean, Babs asked the primary one is how does that relate to the core, and how do we get it into our plan, and then hopefully accepted and helps our BC again, right? But this retrofit of the gates, when that happens, will they remain operable?
Yes, that $4 million estimate increases the height, and then it re-electrifies them. So
Okay.
and it just re-electrifies the one that provides flood protection. The western one would be pulled back and permanently secured in its holding
open position?
In its open position.
Okay, and then that would leave the opportunity in the future for not just fish passage, but maybe people passage at some point, right?
That is correct. One of the issues that we did not explore, and I think all of these co-benefits probably warrant their own report that
Right.
sort of analyzes them and looks at them in greater detail. That has been an interest that the Parks Department has expressed, and so we did carry that forward as an alternative. The feasibility of that is unknown. Certainly, the Mike McGowan Bridge has some limitations attached to it. It's a very narrow span. And it does have a piling in the middle of it, so we don't know how that would work. Also, there would be a tremendous amount of dredging that would have to occur to
Right.
move vehicles from the Sacramento River into the deep water ship channel, and then there's obviously head differentials. Again, why there are probably separate reports that are needed to be looked at each of these co-benefits.
Okay, well, it's great that, it's a solution that keeps the options open. That's great.
That was the intent.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Southport project update. Mr. Ken.
Good morning, Chair Ramos, members of the board. I am here to provide you an update. How about now? There we go. Regarding the Southport levy project. With us being in March and approaching the April timeframe, there's some early work we're looking to do here in the next few weeks. Wanted to give you an overview of what we summarize what we did in 2017, give you an idea what we're doing the next couple of weeks, and then also throughout 2018, and I'll close it with some pictures of kind of where we're at right now, the latest and greatest. We also have a video that we've uploaded to our website. I don't have that presentation here, but something if you have time, want to check out and kind of can see a video of kind of things, how they've evolved. It's a rough draft right now, but give you an idea kind of what we're looking to put together and go from there. So this picture you see right here is the biggest pan view of the project area. It's right around the vicinity of the Davis Road area. It gives you a good overview of kind of the borrow sites and the rest of the project. So what did we do in 2017? Well, we hauled over 600,000 cubic yards from the River Park borrow sites. That was the adjacent borrow sites that we used to build the levee foundation. We also hauled another 93,000 cubic yards from borrow 1. That was our offsite source, primarily type 2 clay that we've been using in the core of the levee. We completed 15,000 foot of the setback levee embankment. That was the foundation work. That started at the south end of B1, B2, where the setback levee begins, going to just south of Linden Road. And then we have a small segment of levee foundation built at the very north end, where we're tying back in with the setback levee. We completed 14,200 foot of slurry wall installation that started at the south setback levee, completed that up to just behind Bees Lake. And that's where that slurry wall has been completed to so far. We did some roadway construction. We built the South River Road realignment. You'll see that in one of the pictures I have coming up, very south end of the city. We did build the Borrow 1 ramp as part of the restoration activities. And we also constructed Access Road 6, which was the last resident that needed to be fed off of something other than South River Road. So that now allows us to move forward with South River Road closures and provide everybody access via Village Parkway or one of the subdivisions, up to the north. We are continuing to do some well and septic system abandonments, but for the most part that's been done. Structure demolition has been completed. We've completed a majority of the utility relocation. There is an above-ground line that we need to ultimately replace with an underground feed, and that should be done later on this year. We also installed some drainage culverts. Majority of them have already been installed along Village Parkway. Those give access to the reclamation district on some of the roadway improvements we constructed with Village Parkway, and we'll go ahead and probably commence those probably closer to the April-May timeframe. Those are not necessarily critical path items, but the contractor is looking to get started sooner rather than later. All right, so 2018, I mentioned some of the early work construction, things we're doing here throughout March and the beginning of April. Some of that work entails silt fence installation, both water side and land side of the levee, primarily in the fix-in-place segments. We already have silt fence along the perimeter of the setback levee, but once we get that complete, we should be tidied up there. We're continuing some material sampling of the existing levee, just so we can go ahead and figure out what the material types are, so we know where it goes in the levee, in the seepage berm, or back in the restoration areas. We got some stump removal and backfill. With the rains kind of being what they are, they've kind of stepped off that work for the time being, but something they'd like to go ahead and get started prior to the April 15th date. Some miscellaneous demolition activities, some fencing, gates, things of that nature, coordinating with the property owners before we go in there to make sure that everything's secured. Doing some degrade of the adjacent landside roads and driveway connections. The only right-of-way connection kind of still existing is there at the south end where Gregory and South River Road tie in. So that's primarily where that work would wind up taking place, but there's also some adjacent driveways that will wind up degrading with that work. Topsoil stripping, roadway milling, and setback levee roadway grading are some of the other items. But like I said, with the rains we've had and are going to continue to have, it'll be a little bit slow going, but we're hoping to get as much advanced work done in these next few weeks prior to April 15th. So what do we have slated for 2018? Well, we do have quite a bit of work. still to go. We've gotten the slurry wall for a majority of the project and the setback levee. We still need to do the fix-and-place sections. So we've got the setback levee work, slurry wall, and embankment. We've finished a majority of that. Like I said, we have a small segment in the vicinity of Linden Road we need to do. That'll be started later on in the year. The fix-and-place levee work, slurry wall, and embankment, that'll probably be started in that April-May timeframe. We've got the DMM, the deeper wall mix method, we're doing at the very north end. So that'll be a little bit different operation than what you've seen out there with the long stick excavator. But that'll happen over a 4-month period, starting in May. We got some new roadway work we'll wind up doing, and the closure of South River Road. That closure is looking to happen around April 7th with all the ancillary roadways kind of in place. We'll have an interim entrance to the yacht club and Sherwood Marina. So we're coordinating with those folks to make sure that they continue to operate and continue to kind of flop traffic between that entrance and then the entrance to the south off Sherwood as we progress through construction and build a levee up in different segments. We'll be doing the offset area grading. All the material that we'll be getting for the levee embankment and restoration is coming between that offset area. That's the area between the setback and the existing levee. And there's quite a bit of material we're moving for that. Levee degrading, so portions of the existing levee are going to be degraded anywhere down to 30 foot to 2.5 foot. The only segment of levee kind of staying in place is between the marinas, so that'll remain untouched. But everything north and south of that, up until the tie-in points for the fix in place, will be degraded. We'll be restoring the River Park borrow sites as part of our work. That's that 600,000 cubic yards, I think we mentioned. We're not restoring anything in addition to what we've already done in Borrow 1, so that work has been completed. So that material will come, like I said, from the offset area as well as the degrade work. And to give you an idea, we got about $35 million worth of projected work still to complete out of the preliminary 50. So quite a bit ahead of us, but we've got a pretty good plan in front of us. But the contractor, as well as ourselves, know we got a lot of work to do in 2018, which is part of the reason we're trying to get a jump on it as soon as we can. Kind of take you through what we did in 2017, starting at the south end of the project. There's the South River Road realignment. This is in segment A, the south end. We didn't do any fix-in-place levee work last year, so this is primarily the work that happened in there. But this is the south end of the slurry wall, kind of ties into where the South Cross levee is. That's that segment where the driveway comes out. That'll be the southern limits of our slurry wall as well as our levee embankment construction. And then moving northwards, takes us into the B2 and the C setback levee areas. That's where the setback levee ties into the existing levee. And moving up north, from these pictures, you can tell kind of the foundation of the two setback levee, and that pile going down the middle is the D-grade cap for the slurry wall. So that's where that 3-foot slurry wall is, as well as the 10-foot clay core we're constructing with this project. And then looking in that bottom right picture, that looks towards the Oak Hall Bend area, the biggest area we have in the offset area. Segments D and E, this is in the vicinity of Davis Road, kind of looking at the Bees Lake area and the Sherwood Marina off in the center, as well as a portion of Village Parkway, which we constructed as phase 1 of this project. This is right behind the Bees Lake area. These are segments E and F. We went ahead and constructed slurry wall through this entire segment as well. Some of the earlier work we'll wind up doing is some of that D-grade cap and building that up. Just north of that is the tie-in at the north end, so segments F and G. G is where we have the deep mix method of wall construction, so you'll see a different rig out there than we've seen in the past. But that work, like I said, should be mobilized here come April, with that work starting in May. The River Park borrow sites, you can see most of them here. Actually, A1 is in the very far distance on my right-hand side. But that's A4, A3, and some of the River Park 2 area that we used last year. That's where that 600,000 cubic yards came from. That'll all be restored later on this year. This is the Borrow 1 restoration site. We got that pond sitting in the backside. We completed that last year. And the ramp construction I mentioned before is over there off on the left-hand side, provides a new ingress, egress into the Borrow site. And that's my presentation. Any questions?
Nope. I got one.
All right.
If you have a productive season this year, how close to completion would you anticipate they would be this fall?
Well, the current schedule they have is for us to be completely done in 2018.
Okay.
That requires hitting some pretty high production numbers, so getting started off, it's one of the things we'll be monitoring. We're also still in the 2018 construction plan phase of review. Before we do any degrade work, they have to demonstrate to us what the plan is, as well as any alternative plans and contingencies if they don't meet their production numbers. So we're continuing to review that with DWR, Central Valley, as well as Army Corps of Engineers. They've got a fairly good plan in place, but without seeing some of their production values, I couldn't tell you exactly where we'd be. I think we'll be pretty far along. I think we'll get the south offset area for the most part completed, and I think we'll have the entire wall constructed through there, so that all that work will be completed. The fix-in-place levee segments will be completed. We'll see how far we can get in the north area, but the plan is to have everything done. So you could see us working out there 12, 16-hour days, 6, 7 days a week. We'll just see as we continue to move forward.
As the progress, okay.
Yeah, but like I said, we've got a pretty stout plan, but we still need to vet it through everybody and make sure everybody's got their input on what that looks like.
Okay, good luck. We wish you well.
Thank you. And then I'll be going ahead and bringing these presentations up on a monthly basis
I
as we move
appreciate
forward.
it. I think we like.
And like I
good.
said, we got some video up now, so you can take a look at that, kind of an overview of what we've got, any recommendations on what you'd like to see as far as, some verbiage or some other things we'll take into consideration so we can put it in the final product.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
WSAFCA update, Mr. Fabian.
Thank you, Chair Ramos, members of the board. We covered almost everything that's in the report, and so I'll just touch on a couple of things. North Area Project closeout. Mark's done a good job of getting some of the final geodetic reviews completed. So in the report, it says that the I Street was completed, and DDBR was currently reviewing the rivers geodetic, but that's also it's done. It's completed. And so in talking with our folks over at DWR, we're going to be closing out the design elements for all of the North Area projects. And then as Mark gets some of the remaining rights and monumentation done for those real estate for the North Area, we'll be able to close out construction as well and free up the retention. So Mark's doing a good job with that. And as you saw earlier in the report, Paul still has, a couple $1 million teed up with DWR right now for review and approval. So he's been doing a great job of processing the acquisition for reimbursement, helping to keep our coffers full so we're able to do all the things that we're able to do and cash flow the project and go through some of the settlement cases that we still have outstanding. So good position financially. And we're tracking it. Seems like we're looking at it daily just to make sure we're on top of it, but there's a lot going on there. Federal project. So since we met last time, the complete economic package has gone out for agency technical review. It went out on March 5th, a little behind schedule, but they're expecting a little quicker turnaround time, about 3 weeks. And it's in parallel with that, the district received direction from Corps Division to message and discuss and document the new criteria, the new BCR, the new metrics, and all of the messaging for the project. So the revised work plan and all of that now should have all of the new metrics as we watch the federal 18 budget process unveil over the next week. So next Friday is the deadline for the current continuing resolution, and I anticipate having a budget in place and not kicking this thing down the road again. So with that budget comes the revised work plan and work plan approval within about 30 days. So we should know within the next 6 to 8 weeks whether or not we've been approved for a PED. And whatever information I get, through the grapevine, I'll share with the board, especially if it's good news. And then also, since we met last, the Corps issued a guidance document. It was internally, and it was shared with us on the Supplemental Appropriations Act that was passed for fiscal year 2018. This is a total of $17.4 billion for civil works that is set aside for states that were affected by hurricanes as well as other natural disasters. That $17.4 billion includes $1.9 billion for near-term repairs, and then $15.5 billion for long-term investments in flood risk reduction. So the Corps has been asked to provide project information to division headquarters. So they're basically assembling a suite of projects that they would like to receive some of the funding for. And the way it's going to roll out, as I understand, they plan to, at least currently, they plan to invest a significant portion of the long-term investment money. What that means, of the 15.5, so what that means in terms of percentage, I don't know. But it will be in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and that's across the nation. So in talking with district staff, they're going to be requesting a significant amount of money for the district to help advance all of the projects within their portfolio, and that includes the West Sacramento project. So in my perfect world, over the course of the next 6 weeks, we receive PED authorization and PED funding, and then sometime in May, or whenever Congress takes up the supplemental appropriations bill, we receive New Start construction. That's my perfect world. But I'm continuing to work with our lobbyists, work with Congressman Matsui's staff, and also get updates as frequently as I can from district to track all of this stuff. So we do meet monthly with the Corps. As a matter of fact, we met with them yesterday, and one of the focuses was on the 5-year cash flow planning for implementation of the federal projects for this district. And it's a bit of a crystal ball exercise, but the gist of what we're doing is trying to look at various different scenarios that might play out, including how the supplemental appropriations may affect the district's funding and then their ability to carry out projects. What we also may see, if they receive a significant amount of the supplemental budget appropriation, it could help advance the use of credit locally. This issue of the locals being able to use credit is a bit of a hard thing to nail down because of the typical stream of appropriations that the district gets on an annual basis. Unless there's a significant amount of additional appropriations annually, there's really not much left over for the Corps to carry as additional funds to apply the credit that we've earned on Southport, to apply the credit that SAFCA has earned on other projects. So we'll have to see how all this pans out, but I'm hopefully optimistic that the district will get a significant amount of funding and can help get our project off to a good start. Yep, that's it on the federal project. Before I leave that topic, which is pretty much all I was going to talk about, yep, that's it. So any questions?
Any questions?
Nope.
No. Let's hope that all comes to fruition. That's the key there. That's good news if we're able to get the start.
Oh, one quick thing, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
The schedule for rolling out the implementation of the supplemental appropriation is in the month of March. The district completes all their coordination with headquarters and provides all of the compilation of recommended projects to fund to headquarters and to, I'm not too sure who the acronym SACW is, but it's somebody who is going to receive all of this stuff within the federal government. And then in April, it gets past OMB, it's OMB review and approval, ASA review and approval, and then submission of the final package to Congress to act. So this is a pretty aggressive schedule, but I guess more to my point about the schedule is some of us will be back in DC during Cap to Cap
Yeah.
when this will be
Timing's
taken up. So the
perfect.
timing is pretty good. Now, with the Cap to Cap teams and the issue papers, which are, fairly broad, they're not real specific, so these may or may not be appropriate topics to drill down on during some of these meetings, but there may be other meetings that can be scheduled outside of the Cap to Cap, flood team that we can discuss these with headquarters and or ASA or wherever.
Okay. Very good. Go ahead.
Well, that was my question was about cap to cap, and using the time well, and you're going,
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'll be there.
And then I think there's another 3 members of the city council are also going.
Okay.
So let's, we need to get together and discuss how best to approach.
Yeah, and we've forwarded at least the attendance and what the focus areas are of each of the council members to Holland and Knight. Obviously, Chairman Ramos, what your focus is, and I'll be on the flood team, I think.
I signed up for that, too.
Yeah, so the only person we don't know the agenda for, if you will, is the mayor. We can assume it's going to be streetcar and flood, and given all that's going on, you can only assume that flood will be high on his list of priorities. But he's not participating in any teams, and so he's poised well to have more surgical meetings with key folks back there. And so that's one of the jobs that Holland Knights is now undertaking, is trying to get some of those meetings scheduled. So
Good.
I'm hoping to attend some of those focused meetings as well, along with the mayor and whoever else
Okay.
goes. So we'll keep you posted. We'll talk about the flood team meetings.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any director's comments this month? I don't have any either, so thank you all for attending. We're adjourned.